Let's assume I'm 18 years old, or 16 if I were to live in the land of the free, and I need to get a vehicle to move around in. My mom wants me to get this, a car. And not just any car, a regular one. I mean, my friends are gonna think I'm more boring than a TV commercial. Now what I really want is this, a fast, pickle compensating, ball tickling machine. I'd impress all my friends with it, and also imagine the amount of girls I'm gonna get. Now, here's the thing, I barely managed to convince my dad that a motorcycle is not just a two-wheel thing for suicidal people. So convincing him to get both a car and a bike, yeah, that's not gonna be feasible.
Most of us petrol heads have probably had this dilemma at some point or another. Could we leave with just a motorcycle? I mean, I've seen YouTubers do it, so how hard can it be, right?
The whole idea of this little challenge is to figure out if I can save money while also doing my passion every single day. It sounds a little too good to be true, but what if it works? Speaking of saving money, buying a bike is reasonably cheap. I'm not talking about the latest Ducati Panigale, but getting something like a Hornet or any other 600 naked bike is cheaper than most people's cars.
Also, if we're talking consumables, I mean, you only have 2 tires, 2 brakes, 2 brake pads, and by its simple nature, a bike will be easier to fix. So you might be better off just getting a bike instead of a car.
And then we get to the biggest advantage of riding a bike daily, and that's commuting. I live in a decently busy city, and so being able to filter my way around cars is invaluable. It's such a huge time saver. Being able to just squeeze between these cars like a kid between Lego blocks, it's honestly a godsend.
Plus, as an added bonus, once I get to my destination, I don't need to wander around for 20 minutes trying to find a parking spot. I just pop onto the sidewalk, make sure I'm not in anyone's way, and that's mostly it.
You know what? Getting to the office like all others is lame. Throwing your keys on the desk is lame. Heck, taking an electric scooter to work? That's even worse. You know what's not lame though? Coming to work like a true hero while putting your helmet on the desk. Yes, I'm cool, and now everybody in the office knows it.
Resale value. I deal with numbers all day. Excel is my second home. That's exactly why I know I'm getting a good value with a bike. The thing is, I could buy a cheap bike, use it for a few years, and sell it for almost the same amount I spent on it. If that's not a deal, I don't know what is.
So everything sounds great, right? It's time to go sell the car and maybe invest that money in a better motorcycle.
Not so fast. You see, there are a lot of downsides of only owning a motorcycle, and the biggest and most obvious one is this: Mother Nature.
Now look, I'm not the type of rider to get scared at the first sign of a drizzle or of a bit of rain, right? I mean, heck, at times I actually find riding in the rain to be relaxing and peaceful. But that's the key word, at times. Needing to do it if rain catches me is not an issue. Wanting to do it from time to time, again, that's cool, but having to do it daily, if I want to or not, that's not as cool. And it definitely can ruin the experience of motorcycling. Also, I mean, if you live in something like California or Florida, this is not an issue. But I don't, and where I live here, it gets pretty cold in the winter, and you actually get snow, so those are times where you can't use the bike. I mean, below like 5 degrees Celsius, riding a bike is like riding on an ice rink. It's not fun at all, and it's actually really dangerous. Heck, I might even consider it suicidal at times.
It's afternoon now, time to finally go home, but first of all I need to pop into a shop and grab some groceries. And here comes another disadvantage of a motorcycle. With the exception of a GS or something big with panniers, motorcycle is not really that practical, and if we're talking about GSs, then this kind of defies the advantage of lane filtering. So while trying to carry your luggage on a bike, you might look either really funky or outright unsafe.
It's late but not dark yet. Well, let's go with some mates at the nearby lake, drink some coke, you know, have an overall good time.
This is fine and actually a lot of fun if every one of us owns a bike. But if they don't, well, I can't really carry almost anyone and almost anything. So at that point, I basically have to choose between riding my bike and hanging out with a friend. Now look, riding is really fun and really cool, but sometimes it's even cooler to hang around with the people you actually care about.
Finally, I get to take a shower and relax. Of course, not before I go and lube my chain.
Remember how we spoke about maintenance earlier? Yes, you only have 2 tires, but those tires are not gonna last remotely as long as car tires usually would. Same thing goes for the brake pads, and yes, oil changes are cheaper, but you have to do them twice as often. Also, motorcycle specific oil is a bit more expensive. And since we talked about tires, yes, you only have 2, but usually quality motorcycle tires are more expensive than car tires. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, let's not fool ourselves. Sure, we might want to believe that the bike maintenance might be cheaper, but at the end of the day, it might not always be like that. Even worse, it might require more maintenance than something like this at times.
Now, you see, I could blue ball everyone and saying that it depends on the person and it depends on your needs and stuff like that, but honestly, it's much simpler than that. If you live in a big urban area, right, like a city, then yeah, you could argue that you can take stuff like Uber or Lyft whenever you need a car, or maybe rent a zip car. But at that point, it kind of defeats the argument of cost effectiveness, right? So that kind of falls. If you're living in the rural area, then yeah, it's excluded. You basically forget about owning a bike. A car is just that useful sometimes. Now, if you only can have one vehicle, and you're trying to decide between a car and a bike, then honestly, my answer is pretty easy. Just get a car, and especially if it's the first vehicle you'll own, then for sure get a car. Look, it's difficult enough to learn how to ride the motorcycle and feather the clutch, try not to drop it, stuff like that. When you add to that your inexperience in traffic and looking all over for signs and what are others gonna do, and just not having the knowledge of how traffic works, you are just in a bad situation and you're so much more likely to crash. And look, not saying you might not crash in a car either, you totally might. But I'll tell you this, crashing on a motorcycle is so much less painful than crashing in a car.
And then we get to my best argument against it. I ride the bike because it's fun. It's truly my biggest passion and I enjoy every second of it. But the thing is, if I had to ride through all of these cold temperatures, rain, snow, hail, it would turn into a bit of a chore. The problem is this can sort of become like making your job into a passion. It can become the greatest thing ever, but you can also start to hate your passion.
At the end of the day, it all depends on how you phrase the question. Can you use a motorcycle as the only means of transportation? Yes, of course. Should you though? I'm not so sure about this one.
you do only have 2 tires, but those tires are not going to last anywhere